Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name is Tim Markle. I'm the director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs. We are recording this, so just want to remind anybody that if they feel like having their screen off, that's fine. You do not need to allow yourself to be recorded, but please do be careful and not use any personal identifiable health information or personal identifiable information, period, or say anything that it's going to come back to haunt you at your next job interview, which has happened. This is not just a what if. These are real case scenarios. I am excited today that Rose Cutting, parent and professional and overall good person from Fenimore, is joining me today. In October, we had a wonderful conversation about what do I need to know when about transition, talking about the transition to adulthood. And we're going to continue that conversation today and try to give you some resources as well. So Rose, you want to explain a little bit more about who you be in Fenimore and what aiming for acceptance is even, and all the cool stuff you got going on? Just give people a little idea about who you are.
Sure, you bet. Thank you, Tim. And thank you for, again, this opportunity to get in front of an audience of people and try and help them get some resources pushed out there, connections made. My largest role is that of a mom of a teenager on the spectrum. And I hold no other titles anywhere in education and or the special needs community. I actually have a very strong agriculture background. And I say that somewhat as a connecting point with some of the people that might tap into this someday, so we have more than just special needs to talk about, but also as a little bit of a disclaimer that no expert here other than just trying to stumble down the same path and learn things as people that might tune into this. In saying that, we took a old feed mill and renovated it into a sensory friendly place to attract outside therapies and connections to help anybody in Southwest Wisconsin that might have some different abilities or support somebody with different abilities, or even we've got wonderful community organizations that tap into us to see how they can help in their community. So they don't even have a loved one that they're trying to support. They're just trying to support their community. So that is us.
Very cool. So if we ever have, like Southern Regional Center does agriculture, we can have you on and people can, let us know what their agriculture questions are.
Hey, well, today we're going to talk about transition, and that often goes into employment or interests and so forth. And how many times are we going to look around and see our loved ones that might need a little bit more, have different abilities, and what's one of their strong interests? It might be something of gardening. It might be taking care of an animal or something. And you know what? There's enough, if you think outside the box, there's enough employment opportunity in the rural area. It's just, you might need to tap into somebody that really knows farming to know how to help get those people involved.
Yep. And that goes back to, I think, something that we talked a little bit about in October is that a lot of when we talk employment, it's going to be connecting and it's going to be networking and it's going to be trying things out. Heaven knows I didn't land with my job doing what I am doing today out of high school nor college. So it takes some trial and error in life. And sometimes with our kiddos with different abilities or special healthcare needs, we sometimes don't want to let them go and let them try because we're afraid of failure, because we want to protect them. We have all these really good reasons, but they need exposure to the different jobs and the different experiences, just like any other kid.
And, Tim, you and I were talking a little bit before this started about some possible resources we could put into this conversation today. And we both like the TIG one, the Transition Services Pre-Employment Outline in the PTP. And the very first thing they list is job exploration.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's, and the reason I chose the career path I chose was because that was what I was inundated in. I was born and raised on a dairy farm. In my true love, my true passion, I followed it. Someday I hope to get back there again and doing that kind of work. But right now, I'm kind of cultivating a different field right now, as they say.
So no matter what, you bring it back to farming.
Yeah, well, you do what you do best.
That's, yeah, they always tell me that I should talk about what I know. And I'm like, well, what fun is there in that? Doesn't get me into as much trouble. I am having trouble bringing up that document, just so you know.
Okay.
I have been trying and it is not working for me at this point, because I'd love to show that.
Okay. Let me see if I can re-put it in the chat. I'll do it to everybody. Maybe I blocked this one.
Oh yeah, it's not liking me at all.
No.
Let me try that one. Nope, still getting an error. So we'll work on getting that out, and I'll throw it into the slideshow before I
Okay.
send the slideshow out.
Okay.
So yeah, I did something really strange for conversations. Is I actually put together a PowerPoint of different things. So in a rarity, I am going to share my screen.
There we go.
And show some stuff. Actually, I'm going to fumble my way through first because I just.
All right. Well, I think one of the points we need to make while you're trying to get that
Please.
shared for everybody, I think one of the points we need to make is that even those of us that others might consider well tapped into the work or a resource, we still don't even know what to find and where to get it. We know, but the information might change, or the lovely thing about local control is you can kind of detail things for your local area, but the unlovely thing is it certainly makes accessing a common resource roadmap a little challenging.
Yes. And so what we're going to talk about, I totally agree. And that's why one of the reasons why I appreciate having you on is because, I know where I live. I know I live in Dane County. I know I live in the shadow of Madison. And we have all sorts of resources. Not all of them are accessible or usable, but we have an abundance of resources. Sometimes those resources don't make it into the hands of parents, and the resources don't always talk to each other. So if you find one, doesn't mean that you're going to find the others. And we keep working on that. But I know it's different down in like Grant County, for instance. And I know it's different depending on the school system.
Yep.
So a couple of things is I wanted to, the first slide is one that I stole from a presentation that an Aging and Disability Resource Center. I liked it because it has pictures. It's not really, a timeline per se, but I love the fact that it starts on the left side with, I know my dreams and goals. And that goes back to the fact that everybody has dreams and goals. Everybody has preferences. Everybody has things that they like and they don't like. And well, we're just happier, we do better when we are doing things that we enjoy and when we're in an environment that we enjoy. And so for me, part of parenting has been learning what my kids' dreams and goals are. What is it they want to do? What do they want to aspire for? And that's not something that I started to think about when they went to high school or when they turned 17. That started at birth. That started to think about, what sort of person am I raising from birth? As my wife put it, she wanted to raise kids that she felt okay giving the keys to the car to. And
Nice.
I'm like, that's a very interesting way to put it, honey, because if they're not showing responsibility around the house, why are they going to be responsible with my car that is a very dangerous, instrument? So I really liked her thought. I like the way she put that.
Yes, I agree.
And so along the ways, we have people that help us with our goals, our parents, our guardians, caretakers, but also teachers, because teachers see these kids and they can feed into these goals. They can recommend books. They can recommend after school activities. They can recommend different groups to join, like 4-H, as well as parents and guardians can do that as well. And then in the world of the ADRC, their most important timeline is at 6 months before someone turns 18, that you should be starting to reach out if you're interested in Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, SSI, or Social Security Disability Income, SSDI. Then start contacting Social Security and find out what documents are you going to need to have for them at age 18 when you want that switch over to occur from a child accessing the system to an adult accessing the system. And same with the ADRC, is that 6 months before the 18th birthday, call them, especially, well, you need to call them if your child's on children's long-term support, if they're receiving waiver services, because those are not going to automatically translate into the world of adult long-term support and adult system of care. And so it's really important that you work with the ADRC, because they're the ones that will work on the adult functional screen to determine what programs that adult may be eligible for. Because again, it's not a given that if they're in the child program, they're just flowing into the adult program. That's not the way that it works. And so that's one of the reasons why the Aging and Disability Resource Center is so important for families, and that you want to reach out to them before 18, because again, there may be paperwork involved. You may have to have another evaluation done depending on the program that you're applying for. But they will help you figure out everything that you need in the way of documentation so that you can take the functional screen and determine what your eligibility is. And then if you're determined eligible, they'll help you, they'll give you what your options are about long-term support. So I'm not going to go into those options because that's an ADRC presentation and I'd probably screw it up anyway. But that is just a really important, that 17.6, just 17.6, contact the ADRC. Even if your child's not receiving long-term supports or aren't the waiver or anything, give them a call and say, look, I got a kiddo with disabilities. He's going to be turning 18 soon, and I'd like to meet with you to figure out what are the resources in my area, because the ADRC are county-based. And so they're going to know the resources in your county. And that's one of the things that I really like about them as well. And so contact the ADRC. We already talked about work. Hopefully, if a child's attending public school, they are already accessing some division of vocational rehabilitation, DVR, think employment, jobs. Hopefully they are already getting some of these job services, because DVR also has what's called pre-vocational job services. So pre-employment transition services, pre-ETS. And these are skill building opportunities so that a student can get ready to be employed. And so each school has a DVR counselor that's working with them. And so schools already have this pipeline into DVR. And so while your child's in school, getting them connected to DVR through the school is a fantastic idea, because that's how they can then hopefully access what you were talking about, the job shadowing, the job experiences, possibly some job fairs, learning how to build a resume, learning how to interview. I mean, none of us, I know I wasn't born knowing how to interview. And, I have numerous examples of not interviewing well that I could share, but it's not something that comes naturally, but they can have trainings on that. Because what we're looking at is that eventually, after high school are you going to go on for more schooling? What does that look like? Where are you going to live? Who are you going to live with? And then how are you going to pay for all the stuff that you want to do? And all of that is wrapped around with who is going to make the decisions? Who is going to decide where I go to school? Who's going to decide where I live? Who's going to decide what I do with my money? And that's why a lot of times you'll hear the term supported decision-making or guardianship. That is just the answer to the question, who makes the decision? Who's going to be the final decision maker? And we want to prepare our kiddos to be, as best as they can be, that final decision maker when they turn 18, because the law says if nothing changes, they're legally responsible. They are an adult. So that's way too much. That's more than this slide said. Go figure. I know everybody is so surprised.
Well, I'm going to say it might be more than what's on the slide, but it's really not, because you're adding the input from the user part of this, or the resource builder.
Mhm.
I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here with you
Please do.
for just a second. The date you not only verbally said, but on your picture here, it says 6 months before 18 for the ADRC. Now, but then you spoke of the DVR and accessing that through school. If a parent's logging into this or watching this for the first time, wanting to seek this, Tim, do they have to, is 6 months before 18 the hardcore rule for all of this information you just presented, or is there a different date and timeline?
It's a great question, and it's a different date and timeline. I wish everything was as simple. So I guess the easiest thing to remember is 17.6. So before 18, definitely ADRC. If you want your child to have employment experiences, you work with your school and say, I would like my child hooked up with DVR, and the DVR representative for that school should meet with your child. And that can happen as early as part of the post-secondary transition plan. Like they could start on the pre-employment stuff at 14, even if it's not an official job. So definitely start thinking employment earlier than 17 and a half. And you can think healthcare earlier than 17 and a half as well, because again, there's nothing magic that makes us smarter when we turn 18. I wish that was the way that it worked. I wish that when my son or daughter turned 18, they automatically knew what a copay was, that they automatically knew what their medications did for them, that they automatically knew who their doctors were. But that's not the way it happened. Is they had to build that knowledge and build that skills. And so it's within this 14 to 18 or 12 to 18 age range that we look at what are all these skill buildings and knowledge building that need to be done around our goals for when we become an adult, when my child becomes an adult. What is it they want to do? Education-wise, health-wise, independent living, job-wise, and then what can we do to build so they're ready when they're 18 to take on that responsibility? Because psychology keeps telling us that nobody's brain is fully developed to 25. And so we've got a lot of people making some really strange decisions at really young ages, myself included in that, as well as some of the decisions, both my kiddo with disabilities and kiddo without disabilities have made.
Right.
And so each person's going to hit these sort of times a little bit different. Like my son has historically been a couple years behind his peers in some of this development. But that didn't mean I didn't spend time building the skills and his knowledge for where he was at. I didn't just sit there and say, oh, well, hopefully he'll get it when he's 18. It's building up those skills and those resources and that knowledge base for them.
And Tim, you just said a key word there, his peers. Because when you talked about the teachers helping with some of this, often I think what's really cool about engaging the educational system and the teachers, and especially those educators or whoever is the faculty and staff person that really engages with the student, they will be able to tell you based on that student's interactions with peers and or their strong interests and likes. So, if you get, if you're person you're trying to help and support through all of this is more like our son who has a hard time making open-ended choices, I don't want to lead him by giving him choices I think. However, I can watch how he interacts with his peers, what they watch, what they, you know, what he tends to like, and I can try and bring those likes into the conversation.
Absolutely. And that's get as much, it's almost, somebody once told me that it's almost like being a detective, is you're looking for those different clues, but detectives don't just sit there and follow around the person. They also ask other people
Yep.
about that person. And so having those conversations with, who our kiddo is spending time with. Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's, maybe they like spending time over at somebody's house. Well, talk to that person's parent if they're around the house. What do you see? What do you see with my kid? Because sometimes, I know this is going to come as a shock to everybody. Sometimes our kids act differently when they're not around their parents. I know, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I've seen it in my own life. And so getting all that input, again, to help them build their goals, to build their dreams, to get to where they want to go, we can help gather that input.
Absolutely.
Love that. All right, let's look at another sort of transition. So this is what, as I said, timeline people are probably thinking about. So the first timeline was from the Aging Disability Resource Center. This one is part of a workbook that is through the Youth Health Transition Initiative called Build Your Bridge. It's a training designed to help families prepare for healthcare transitions. One of the things that I do, well, there's a number of things that I want to point out. You're going to see a lot of the stuff repeated, and I'm so hoping that most of the things have it at the same ages. I did not vet everything to make sure it all matched. So this is going to be interesting as we move forward, because we're now getting beyond this one. I know the next one, it's a new one to me.
Okay.
So there are, thinking healthcare, there are certain areas of consent that, depending on your healthcare system, your child can consent to treatment or not treatment, starting at the age of 12 or 14. Think about reproductive health, think about mental health. And so knowing that that is a possibility just lets you be informed. And it's also important that they know. I also think somewhat it's true with our kiddos, depending on the disability, is that they're really not, like there's no way at 12 that my son was making those decisions. Like I said, he was consistently a couple years behind, but I knew it was there, and it's good to be informed. At age 14, the schools are supposed to be starting a post-secondary transition plan. So this is separate from the IEP, because the IEP is all the goals for that year. It should be those annual goals that build toward a bigger goal, but they're annual goals. This is what we're going to work on this year in these areas. The PTP, the post-secondary transition plan, is focused on, okay, after high school, what do I want to do? And how can I utilize high school to get there? And so it can be a multi-year plan. It's made to change, because heaven knows what I wanted to do at 14 was not what I wanted to do at 16, or what I wanted to do at 18, or what I want to do at 57. We change, we learn new things, we get more information, we get more experiences, and that then changes what we want to do. And so the PTP is made to be more adaptable than the IEP. It should be taken into account in the IEP, but it's separate from the IEP because it is made to be more dynamic.
Okay, so before you move on
Yes.
from that, I want to ask a question, because we're going to go back to me saying that even those of us that might look like we got everything together don't have it together. I'm all of a sudden realizing, you know what? I don't have a paper copy of that. Is that something that our listeners or whoever engages with this, is that something we should be empowering them to say, hey, make sure you get a copy of this? Would they need a copy every year? Would it change that much? Or what should we tell them?
The changes depend on our person, but yes, families and that youth, because the youth is at the center of this, they should know and be working collaboratively on what those goals are. in the post-secondary transition plan. So again, going back what you were saying before, is a lot of what our kiddos are going to accomplish after high school are going to depend on how well their tribe, their group interacts before they exit high school. So as a parent, I have a part in them fulfilling their plans for post-secondary. The school has a part. So if my child has sat down with the school professional and has laid out what they think they want to do after high school and the steps they want to take during high school, darn right, I want to know what that is, because I can then support. So then I can work alongside, and he has a better chance of then succeeding when we're working together. So yes, families should have a copy of the post-secondary transition plan. This is not an optional activity for schools. This is what they are supposed to be doing starting at age 14. Every child with an IEP, every child in special education should have a post-secondary transition plan, and parents and the students should have access to it. Because then you can help inform those changes. You know, it's like, hey, did you know that he now all of a sudden hates dogs? Well, this may change the goal of being a vet tech. So it needs to be adaptable. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
All right. And then here we have also on here is guardianship. And so remember what I said is that if nothing changes at 18, the young adult is legally responsible, can enter into contracts, can marry, can start to rack up debt like nobody's business. These are all things that adults get to do. The responsibilities and the rights of being an adult. They can vote. There are cases, so then it goes back to then who's going to be the primary decision maker? Who's going to make those decisions? Guardianship is a process where the courts look at the evidence and they say this person is incompetent. They are incapable of making decisions. And so somebody else has to be their decision maker. That's a really powerful responsibility. And for a long time, it was assumed that if you had a disability, you needed a guardian. So not true. Everybody is an individual and they all have strengths. And so then we look into the different options of supported decision-making, whether that's powers of attorney, releases of information. And if you go to our website, and I'll try to add this into the resource thing, we have a number of different presentations on supported decision-making and guardianship. We have a father and an attorney. We have somebody from the Board of People with Developmental Disabilities. Last night, we had somebody from Family Voices talking about thinking about supported decision-making. I don't know if that one's actually up there yet, but hopefully by the end of the day, it will be, or at the end of the week, let's say, give myself a little bit of a break. But this is, again, this isn't something that you want to think about on the eve of the 18th birthday. It needs to be thought about and planned for.
And Tim, I think one of the main points we need to let people know of why that is, and this is more of the heartstring pull and less of the checking off a list, is that if you happen to get into the individual being 18, it's my understanding that they need to be in the legal proceedings with you and actively hear how you don't think that they should control complete decision making with that guardianship piece of it. And you know, Tim, you and I have fielded many calls in many different situations, and boy, when that one comes through after they're 18, you know it's going to be a hard conversation.
Yeah, and it should be a hard conversation. This shouldn't be a flippant conversation.
No.
And I would say that if you're thinking about having that conversation after 18, then you should be thinking about having that conversation before 18.
Right.
Is as much as possible that adolescent young adult should be part of making these decisions, or be a part of understanding why they're not being allowed to make the decisions as much as they can. I mean,
Right.
I know there are, I know this is not blanket for everybody. I'm just saying, let's do our best to include the person with the disability in the decision making. Then we have selective service for males, and guess what? They don't care. Just when that child, when my kiddo turned 17, 17 and 11 months, we had to register him. Now, you don't want him fighting in a war or doing anything like that. Not going to happen. But that's not a reason to not register. Is right now our boys have to register. Again, working with if you're going to get any public benefits, supplemental security income, start working with the month. It's not going to get changed until after they turn 18 in a month. But there's paperwork and there's groundwork that needs to be done to make that happen. So don't wait until they're 18 and a half to say, oh, I wonder why they're not getting their supplemental income check. Huh? Yeah, it's because the process wasn't followed. And so, and again, the ADRC is really good at helping you understand exactly when. And then we've already talked about support decision-making. So I want to go on to a newer transition roadmap. This roadmap was developed by a group in Rock County that was specifically looking at what does an integrated transition plan look like? So if we were not going to separate out, oh, let's just talk education, let's just talk employment, let's just talk healthcare, let's just talk independent living. But the fact that this child, this family is dealing with all of this, whether we see it as integrated or not, it's integrated for the family. It's all transition and it all interacts and it all depends on each other. And it's not as nice separated as silos as the system tries to make it out to be. So this is what this work group came up with. And they thought it was really important to start younger, is what they were hearing from their families. And this was a combination of community people, educators, and family members. And one of the things that they were hearing is that we never found out about this stuff soon enough. Is I wish I had known sooner. I wish I had known sooner is the mantra that just keeps coming through our transition. And so they started at 12 and 13 to begin planning for transition. So begin planning for transition to high school. So they also had this really big change for a lot of our kids between that middle school year and the high school years. Is school can look radically different. And again, that depends on your district. Sometimes it means you're just going to the other part of the building for some of our smaller districts. Sometimes it means you're going across town to a whole nother place with our consolidated high schools. You're grabbing that bus and you're on the bus for a while. And so preparing for that change, they thought was really important to that eventual change of transition to adulthood. Beginning those independent conversations with health providers made the list. So if you want to do something to help your child prepare to be in charge of their own healthcare as an adult, encourage them, let them spend time alone with the doctor so that they get used to talking to the health professional, so that they can learn that this is a trusted professional that they can share and talk with. A lot of times we just like to stay in the room because we want to know, because we're worried, because we care. But at some point, the child has to realize this is their doctor. Is that pediatrician is no longer my child's doctor, mine, but it is their doctor. I also like their note about think about and write down names of people who support me. What you're saying is, who is it? Who's important in my kid's life? This sense of circle of support. And then we've already talked about this whole exploration. I love that was in there. Take a gauge of what is their self-advocacy, social independence skills. How are they at standing up for themselves and making their own decisions? Do you know what their preferences are? Do they really like oat milk? Or do you really like oat milk? And so trying to understand what are their preferences? And then going through again, we have 14, that formal school transition planning. That's the post-secondary transition plan. Start thinking about, through high school, one of the things that parents need to be thinking about is my child going to graduate? Which means, are they going to fulfill the requirements for graduation set forth by the Department of Public Instruction, Wisconsin, and your local school board?
Right.
Or is there going to be an alternative based on your school board, an alternative certificate? Are they just going to have a record that they went to high school? Are they going to continue into an 18 and beyond program? Because public education could continue until the end of the school year or the 21st birthday. And so that's where you have your beyond 18 programs. And those are meant to be individualized, so they look different. They have guidelines, but they're going to look different they should look different every year, right, depending on who's in the program. It shouldn't be, oh, we have this 18 and beyond program set up, and we're just going to do this year after year after year after year. No, it has to be based on the needs, the goals in the IEP. The IEP continues in the 18 and beyond program. And so it has to match the goals of the student. And we know that all students' goals aren't the same. And so it's meant to be an individualized experiential program that hopefully takes place more off campus than on campus. So really starting to immerse our students into the community and get them used to interacting with the community.
The only other thing I would add to that is for those ones you're supporting that are more aware of timelines and are kind of your black and white thinkers. And you're going to try and have them access that 18 to 21 program. Make sure you start that conversation in a very supportive and upbeat, understanding way, because you'll get your black and white thinkers that might have a friend or two that they've engaged with that have walked across the stage with them, and they don't see them next year when they come back. Like you said, though, they should be off campus more than on campus. However, they're already engaged and know that, wait, that person went to somewhere else and I'm not. Did I do something wrong?
Yeah, I love that point, Rose. And that's that whole understanding our child to understand what they understand. Okay, so horrible statement, bunch of understandings in there, but I need to understand, I can see and I can acknowledge maybe the differences, the strengths and the deficits in my child. Doesn't mean that they understand their strengths, deficits, or differences. But there always seems to be this point where our children realize, hold on a minute, there's something different about me. And that could be a time of grief. That could be a time of anger, a time of sadness. And so being there to help support them in the choices that are available to them based on who they are, where they are, and what's available to them.
And Tim, you pick up about the whole health part of it. I think you have more experience, not only through your job, but through your personal life, of needing to know more of the health part of it. And so in that vein, part of their health at this time period is, their body doesn't know that they're special needs or have different abilities. So they're also accessing through the same hormones that their peers are accessing through. So, my son, who has a longer processing time and tends to be black and white, there are days when those things aren't the issue. It's the neurotypical hormones that are the issue, right?
Absolutely. They're teenagers first.
Yeah.
They just have to be teenagers with a disability. But all those things that are common for teenagers are going to be common for them as well. Mm-hmm. They just may have a little bit more trouble integrating it. Not that most teenagers easily integrate all those changes anyway. It's hard.
Really?
It is truly, it's just hard. And so, again, understanding and being there with who they are as a person is really important. I'm running out of my own time frame. I came across this really cool one on Edgerton, Little Edgerton, Wisconsin. Love them. Home of the Chili Fest, Chili Mania. Fantastic every year. I hope to see you at Chili Mania next year. So Edgerton came up with sort of their own timeline, which I love, and it's on their website. Start thinking and talking about transition, consider the future, consider job shadowings, when to contact the ADRC. Yeah, I just thought they did a really nice job. They even, I don't know how, because I don't think I've had personal contact with Edgerton School District, but they even have at age 18 transition to adult care providers, which of course that should happen. The transitioning should happen before there's that transfer of care,
Right.
that happens at 18. But contact insurance about continued coverage, again, I would say push that back a couple of years so that you're not surprised. But the fact that they included healthcare is very encouraging to me for Edgerton. And then remember that at 21, everybody ages out of education services. And so everybody should leave with a summary of academic performance. And so that's another thing that parents can look for at the end is, where's my child's SOP, my summary of performance. And then we talked a little bit about the long-term care eligibility. But I just thought this was a really neat example of what schools can do. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It's not, horribly detailed, but it has some really good points to it. It's a really nice timeline. And then the last timeline is a newer one from the Madison Metropolitan School District with a new publication that they just put out for their students in an MMSD. And again, I love the fact that they start at birth.
Right.
At birth to 14, consider the long-term goals and transition needs. Is you are the expert on your child. Is you spend years, you have an extended internship in learning about your child. And during birth to 14, it's exploring, are public benefits right for them? Do they need the support of the Children's Long-Term Support? Should I contact the Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs regional centers or their network? Love Inc. goes to that circle of support. Who else is going to help me support my child? And any other disability-related supports that are out there. And then their age 14 to 18. Again, that post-secondary transition plan comes in, that PTP, apply to DVR. And again, that should be relatively easy to do through your school. Is DVR is supposed to be working with each and every high school in Wisconsin. Again, when to talk to the ADRC. I love the fact that 14 to 18, they put down explore guardianship and supportive decision-making is not waiting until 18. So there's some really smart people at Madison Metropolitan School District that I really like the way that they are looking at transition services. And then starting to explore those different options. Campus Connect is where you could get college credit while going to high school. Project Search. If you don't know about Project Search, hopefully there's one close in your area. It's an awesome job development program. And then everything else that they can do. So this is just a smattering of the timelines. And the last one, because I have to pay my own bills, is basically about the health, is consider that healthcare transition can have its own timeline as well. And so when you're thinking healthcare, at age 18, hopefully your doctor is talking transition and they're letting you know what their policy is. How do they transfer to adult care? How do they transfer out of the child or adolescent programming? So hopefully they're aware of that. If not, families can ask. Families could sit there and say, look, I know she's 12 now, but if I do my math right, in 6 years, she's going to be 18 and we're not going to be able to see you. So what's going to happen? How can we prepare for that? It's a great conversation. to have. And the doctor may say, well, I'm a family practitioner, so they can continue to see me. But the way we see patients change.
Right.
And that's really important for some of our kids to understand, is that just because they're seeing the same doctor in the same place, that visit may look entirely different. It shouldn't, but it might look different after 18 than before 18. And it depends on the clinic.
Yep.
Just some clinics are better at it than others. Start planning that transition planning again. What are the skills? Where can my child start to take over their being in charge of their healthcare? What can I teach them when they're still with me in a supportive environment? Talking about what will the care look like. And for some of our kiddos, this also includes a change in hospitals. Is some of our kids get used to going to children's hospitals. For most children, there comes an age where it's no longer the children's hospital. And so introducing them to the new hospital with excellent doctors and nurses that are there that care about you as well. It may look different, it may smell different, but the care is still going to be there. There's excellent doctors, excellent nurses, excellent people that care for you in the adult hospital too. We just have to get you acclimated to it. And then at 18 to 22, there's that transfer. And just like there should be a summary of performance for school, there should also be a shared plan of care or a summary of care that goes with the 18-year-old to their new doctor or their new system or the other side of the clinic, whatever it may be. And so we think about healthcare as this on-ramp, building those skills to take charge of your own health care. Then there's this transfer that happens, but it's not over until we have them fully integrated into adult healthcare. So we include that as part of the transition as well. And so do they understand who their doctor is? Do they understand how to make those appointments? Are they active in leading their own healthcare? Are they integrated into the adult healthcare system? And so that's when we would finally say, all of this is transition and all of it can be worked on. Well, this is fun.
I think there's going to be a lot of information here. And Tim, I'm just going to do one follow-up question for those that are watching this and feeling a little overwhelmed. Right?
Yeah.
So they're going to possibly have follow-up questions. Where would be the best place you would send somebody for the quickest access to the follow-up question, even if that's not the end landing place for them, but a beginning place to say, if you have a question on this or this topic, here's where you go. Where would you send them?
I'm biased, but I would so send them, especially for people in the southern region, southwest region of Wisconsin, is contact the Southern Regional Center out of the Waisman Center, 1-800-532-3321. I'll try to remember, put that onto the resource sheet as well. But they know the system. So they may not know the details, but if you ask them a question, they're going to know who's going to be able to answer that. Or if it is within their realm, they're going to find you the answer. Like you call and say, okay, I heard this Tim Markle and Rose person talk about this PTP. Where can I access it? The answer, they'll tell you the answer is yes. It is publicly available. You can fill out a post-secondary transition plan with your kiddo tonight. You have access to that. There's an app and everything. And so they can point you to that resource so you don't have to keep all of the details in your mind. They are there to help families take the next step in transition.
So Tim, taking what you just said and a point you had made earlier of, hey, I wish I would have known this information way back when. There's going to be some folks that are going to hear this and they're going to think, okay, but my kid is now 18. Are these folks still going to, if I call this number, are they still going to know where to help me send my 18-plus-year-old?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is number one, we are tasked with helping families who have children birth to 21. But we also realize that those services that they need at 18 and 19 they might also need when they're 30, 35. And so our specialists know the system, or again, they know who to refer people to. So we can, some of the questions that we'll ask at 18 is, are they still in school? Have they transferred? What is their insurance coverage like? What sort of benefits have they applied for? Who's making the decisions for them? Because these questions will impact then where they can find help and where they can get assistance from. So
Perfect.
yes, please call us.
Perfect. Thank you for all this information. These timelines are incredible. I'll help remind you to grab the TIG one too, because
Yes.
it's not so much a timeline, it's more just little bullet points. Yeah, can't wait to push this one out there.
No problem. And then we'll also, I'm also trying to remember in the back of my head that there's, a number of places that now have like transition guides, which are, just like the one you found earlier, they could be long and involved, but they will have great information in them. So we'll also try to link to a couple of those as well.
Great. Well,
All
Tim,
right.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for being here talking transition again. Who knows? Maybe the crowd will speak and they'll say, we want a part 3. But regardless, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your passion for helping families in your area. And I hope you and your family have a really Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. As I've been telling people, however you celebrate with joy.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot,
Same to you
Rose.
and your family.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.